I freaking love Diablo 4. Okay, I enjoyed the story so much. I really loved it. And I love the end game. And I basically love everything about the game. So I'm getting so sad about going to Reddit, just watching all the complaints from people and the pro gamers with their super powerful builds getting to the end game instantly and just complaining, and they haven't enjoyed the game. I'm gonna teach you how to basically enjoy any game, but especially Diablo 4. You should play the game the way the developers intended. Okay, I watched all the videos that came out before Diablo 4 released, and I think I have a pretty good idea how the game is intended to be played. Okay, I know the fun in trying to break builds. Okay, I've earned money from MOBA games. I've been a professional MOBA player, and it was basically my job to read patch notes and find overpowered stuff. But Diablo 4 is not that kind of game. Yeah, you can play it competitively if you want to. You can focus on PvP, but most of us casuals are not going to do that. Okay, but you can. Choice is a big thing in this game. So I'm gonna bring up some points that the developers focused on, and I'm gonna talk about them. First, here I'm gonna bring them up real quick, and then I'm gonna go through how you can play the game from level 1 and have fun for hundreds of hours. Okay, I'm in the end game basically now, and I'm still having tons of fun playing the game. It can be more intense than a MOBA game, okay? And that's why we want the slow combats that the developers talked about, but I'm gonna get to that. So I'm gonna talk about the campaign, the world building, and multiplayer. That's the first thing. How are you supposed to play it to have maximum amount of fun? I'm gonna talk about how to progress from level 1 to 50 and from 50 to 70 and after 70. And I'm gonna talk about the slow combat, because that was super important for the developers. The campaign was also important, and how to progress was important. I'm gonna talk about the choice. They mentioned that in like every video basically. Like player choice was super important for them, that you get to do choices. And just think about that alone. If you follow a build guide, you remove 90% of the fun in this game. Okay, maybe not 90%, but the player choice is a huge thing. And you remove the choice by following a build guide. Like, you don't have any choices anymore, you're just doing as the guide tells you to do. And then you could play another game. Like, that's not how you should play the game. You should play with the game, not against the game. And then I'm gonna talk about builds, and mainly how you make your own builds, how you have fun in this game. Okay, so let's just jump right into it. When you first start playing the game, you should realize that Blizzard put a lot of effort in making the different zones have their own theme and have their own problems and be basically their own little world. So how I would advise you start the game from the first time. You play mostly solo. The developers were big on there being a multiplayer, and you can actually go play Act 3 first, and maybe you play Act 1 and 2 with a friend or something like that, but you should have a lot of alone time, okay? To be able to think, to read the dialogues, to hear everything. You really should learn how the area you are in works. They put a lot of effort into it. Okay, so the campaign will take you to different places, and then it's basically your job to like get to know that place. The story will get so much more rich. You will understand so much more. Like, do the side quests. That's basically what the side quests are for, making you understand how that area of the world works. They put so much effort into the textures of everything. Look at stuff, it's fantastic looking, and that most of the pros agree with me there. It's the best looking MOBA, and that's basically because Blizzard had the most money. They have super good voice actors. Okay, the story is super good, like 99% of the time it's really, really good. And a lot of players won't agree with me because they weren't invested. They didn't do the side quests. They skipped cutscenes and stuff like that. So if you're gonna play with another player for your first playthrough, I would say they also have to take it slow. Okay, so that's the biggest thing. Take it slow, play the campaign for the story, do the side quests to get to know the different places. Okay, don't bother with the dungeons if you don't have a quest in them. Just do the dungeons that you have a quest to go to. And you should aim to be around level 50, because that's the way the game was intended when you complete the campaign. And then it will be kind of balanced. I was a bit higher because I had played so many hours because I took it super slow. So like the final acts was kind of easy. You should also play, I would recommend soft core and to play on World Tier 2. But you should play as if you were playing hardcore. You don't want to die. Like there are a lot of defensive things in the games. You should use them. And that will help your mentality that the game is not about just going as fast as possible. Damage makes you go faster, and armor or defense makes you be able to complete higher tier content. So this will help you a lot. I have a lot of friends who struggled with the capstones dungeons because they follow guides, they played World Tier 1 and stuff like that, and they didn't have enough defense to be able to do them. So play World Tier 2. Then you get to the slow combat stuff, which I will talk about later. That is a big part of why the gameplay is fun in this game. If you have the choice between defense and offense, choose defense every time. How to progress the game, okay? As you get invested in the game, as I did, you might feel that like after I've already talked about level 50 and the main story, it kind of felt like the game ended. You know, I've completed the main story and I'm like, what to do now? I had already gotten my money's worth. I had gotten a lot of gaming hours and a lot of good cutscenes and voice actors and a very beautiful game, and I was content, like, yeah, this was worth the money. It was an expensive game, but the story itself, it's a good game. I could go on and play other games. It would have been fine. But, so, you complete the campaign and you're probably around 50 or even more. So the first capstone dungeon, if you have played on World Tier 2, it will be easy. Okay. It will be harder if you played World Tier 1 because you're not used to dodging enemy skills and stuff like that. So you complete the capstone and you get to World Tier 3 after the dungeon. So now you're finished with basically finished with the campaign. What should you do? Okay, now the game I felt that now it's just about getting higher gear, right? That's the game. That's the Diablo for you. That's how the other Diablo games were as well. You're just farming to get better gear, to get better farm. Okay. And that's kind of how you should look at World Tier 3, not 4. Because why are you gonna farm? Like, you should try to spend as little time as possible in World Tier 3. So now your goal is just to complete the next capstone dungeon. And you will be able to do that just fine. Just try the new endgame content. Do 2 hell tides, open 2 super hell tide chests. You can Google what that is. And do 2 Tree of Whispers, do 2 nightmare dungeons, and you will be set. Okay, you will have the all sacred gear that you want, and I will talk about how you make your own build and stuff later. So you try to do capstone dungeons as soon as possible, and then you will have this your first experience with the slow combat that the developers intended. The awesome feeling about doing, like I did it at, I think I did level 70 capstone at like level 63 or something, and it was super fun. It was hard. I had to do it many times. I think I had to like actually get 1 extra level or something to be able to do it. And I only spent a couple of hours, like maybe 10, not even that, 5-6 hours in World Tier 3. Like, even if you're a power gamer, why should you be satisfied with getting sacred items when you know in World Tier 3 they're gonna drop better items that you can't get in World Tier 3? So just be done with that. And that's a nice goal to have. Like, you should just become as strong as you need to be able to get to World Tier 4. And then you're gonna have a lot of hard content, because if you're just level 65 something and World Tier 4 is at least level 70, you're gonna have a good time. It's gonna be fun. I promise you, it's gonna be real fun. And then you do whatever you think is fun until you get to around level 75, and you maybe start getting bored at doing Tree of Whispers and dungeons and hell tides and PvP, and you try everything out, and you will level up quite fast. So this is when you really should focus on your own build, making these small increments and slowly migrating to a new build. You shouldn't look anything up. 75, that is the end game. Okay, you are in the end game. You can find item power level 740 something, which is the highest tier of items. So you might keep that item for the rest of the game for that build, but you're gonna change build, so then you're probably gonna change the item. But you shouldn't be mad if you keep the same item for 10 levels. Like, why should you rush to level 100 and then farm items? You can get the same items at level 75. If you're at level 100, you might keep that item forever, and it's the same from level 75. You should just see level 75 as paragon levels after that. It makes you inherently stronger to level up, but it's the end game. You should plan your builds, you should make these small increasements and find better items and stuff like that. What is fun, at least for me, is to push as high nightmare dungeons as possible. All the other end game activities are not as fun. Okay, and you should die a lot. It should be super hard. And that brings us to the next topic, the slow combat. That's how you get the slow combat that we so desperately want. Where everything matters. Where every single move the enemies can do matters. And you will know the moves because you have played World Tier 2, you have played under level because you got to World Tier 4, maybe under level 70, and like enemies are hard. You're not just killing everything instantly. And that's the sweet spot. That's when this game is its best. Another big tip is don't care about your Paragon board too much. Like it just makes it harder to change build. Just pick some things that are good, that like works for basically every build. Like as a barbarian, like most builds, all the builds want vulnerable damage and take less damage from vulnerable targets and stuff like that. So go for that. Don't level up your glyphs that's only deal bleed damage too much. I still play with that because I started off as a bleed build and I haven't adjusted yet. But like putting the effort to change the whole Paragon thing, I think that's like a level 100 thing. That's the super late end game. You should just be able to freely change builds easily by just changing your skill tree and don't minding the Paragon board too much. I know that my next build is going to be even more brawl focused. Like you can see the game right now that's playing, I can't, but so I'm gonna start leveling up the 18% extra damage with brawling skills even for my next build. So that you can do, like change out 1 or 2 glyphs basically. That's how you change your builds. Anyway, you got to the point where you want to be. You have the slow combat and you're like, isn't slow combat boring? No, I can tell you it's not. Like if you compare speedrunning Greater Rifts in Diablo 3 or Endgame Path of Exile, of course they are like faster than a MOBA game, but are they really more intense? You're just blitzing through, you're not thinking, everything just dies. That's not as fun. And people who have played MOBAs, they know that team fights are really freaking intense, even if they are slow. Like things are not dying all the time. But they are intense because you have to think about what the enemies are doing. And Blizzard were huge on that when they developed the game. All the enemies have different abilities that you have to know about. Even some players don't know how, this ghost with many arms, it can like charge another friend and make him do a super strong attack. And it's super well telegraphed, but if you don't dodge it, you should die. Like that's what makes it intense. You see this sword guy charging up his sword, and if he hits you and impales you, you're stunned for like 2 seconds or something, and yeah, you probably die if there's a lot of enemies around. If you follow a build guide, the build guide will basically dumb down the game. Like you won't have to care about resources. Why are there resources in the game? Because you should have to care about them. If you want a maxed out build, you should probably run out of resources every now and then. Otherwise, if you are constantly on full resources, you could have swapped one of the affixes to damage instead of lesser resource cost or something. So anyway, like why do you want to dumb down the game? I think it was Crip who said that like barbarians and druids, they can basically have 100% uptime on their unstoppable. And CC is a big part of the end game. You don't want to have 100% uptime on your unstoppable. I don't play with unstoppable at all. You can have a skill that makes you unstoppable or that you can use while you are rooted or stuff, but yeah. They dumb you down. They make you not need resources, they make you not need to think about enemy stuns. And what else? I think I had another example. Yeah, for example, shouts with the barbarian. Like, if you have 100% uptime on your shouts, you have basically 3 buttons that you just click on cooldown all the time. How fun is that? That's not fun. In this build that I have now, I had to think about everything all the time. I can use every skill in many different ways. Like I can jump into combat, I can flee out of combat with the jump, I can use it as a resource generator. I can stand in the earthquake that it creates to give me more damage and take less damage. I can use kick to group up enemies if the content is quite easy to kill them faster. I can use kick to kick one big enemy away. If there are like 3 or 4 elites at the same time, I can solo them one at a time. I can use kick as a bowling ball. Like it gives every enemy have like if they die, they deal 4,000 damage to everything around them. So if there's a lot of low HP mobs, you can kill them with kick. So it's very versatile. Just keep clicking shouts on cooldown, that's not versatile. So don't follow the guides. Make the guides yourself, okay? And push as high, that's the end game. Push as high nightmare dungeons as you can with your own build and slowly migrate to another builds. Like you find this legendary weapon that gives you plus, or this amulet that gives you +3 to brawling skills, then maybe you go into brawling. That's how I did it from level 1, and that's how you should build your own build. So now I'm going to talk about building from level 1 to like 75, and then after 75, and I'm going to show you how to do it. So the first, when you start the game, everyone basically just play the items they found. Like the first yellow item you find, of course you're just going to equip it. You're probably not even going to read what they do. But since you're playing as if you were playing a hardcore, you're going to spend more time in base. And you should not, as the famous quote from, what's he called? Raxtrax. Like, the town is lava, he said. Maybe he wasn't the first one to say it. That's how pro players play, but you shouldn't. You should look at your gear, learn how it works, and spend a lot of time choosing your gear. Yeah, I could have done content and grind and stuff and found better items and been stronger. I could increase my power in 1 hour more, but that's not as fun. I don't want to die. I play as if I'm a hardcore character, so I put some time into always check. Okay, buying stuff from the vendors are expensive in the early game as well, but you know, checking all the gear, see, is this better, is this worth an upgrade? And then when you find your first legendary aspect or your first legendary item, you're like, oh, I found this item that makes a really good effect with the Hammer of the Ancients. So then you transition naturally into a Hoda build. It's obvious. And then you find more and more legendaries, and then maybe you have found 3 aspects that makes a certain skill better, and then you slowly migrate to that build. Don't follow a guide. Like, this is even faster than following a guide, because you don't have all the aspects and stuff in the early game. So play the game as they intended it to. Use making your own builds as you go, depending on the items you find. Like, the extremely rare, super unique items are a testament to this. If you would find like one of these super godly items that is like 1 in a trillion drops, of course you're gonna change your build around if you find this item. And that's how they want the game to be. I've played a lot of hours and I have not found all the aspects yet. Anyway, so that's how you should play, like 1 to 75. And then you start getting all the different aspects and you have a lot to work with and you can think of different builds. So how do you make your own build? Okay. You don't go to YouTube and search for what's the strongest build with this, okay? Some things that are good to know if you struggle, if you actually can't beat content on your same level, is how the damage buckets work, and I'm gonna go over it super quickly, the things you need to know if you're gonna optimize your damage and stuff. And that's just like vulnerable damage, for example, is like 10 times better than damage to close. All of the close damage, damage to injured, damage with a skill, damage against bleeding, damage against far away damage, all of that goes into the same buckets. Like, say you have 20 things that give you 50% extra damage, so you have 1,000 extra damage for different reasons. Then if you get another affix that gives you 50% bonus, that's a 5% increase. Even if it says 50%, it's only a 5% increase in damage. But vulnerable damage, it has a little X on it. That's its own damage bucket. So if that says 50% extra damage, if you don't have any vulnerable damage, that's basically you deal 50% extra damage. Okay, so I had to redo this part because, of course, I'm no streamer, so I forgot to change the recording thing. Anyway, you go to this site to make your own build. I can link it in the description. And the Blizzard development team, they have done a fantastic job at balancing this game. You can basically make a viable build around any skill, anything you find here. And the pro players will not agree. They will be like, oh, this skill is too weak and this skill is too weak and this. There will only be one build that is the best, okay? But you're not going to play that build, so you can use anything you want, and that's the most fantastic part about this. Like, if you start off using the best build in the game, then if you find a nice item and you get ideas for your own build, it's just gonna feel weak because you've started off with the best thing. It's much better to not follow any guides and do your own build, and you get new ideas and you can naturally progress to the next build. So how would this work? How do you get your fantasy juices start flowing? Okay, maybe you find this, I think one of the first uniques I found was this frenzy amulet. I haven't actually done a frenzy build, but let's say I find this one. Okay, that's actually the only unique that has anything to do with frenzy. But this is how you do it. You go to this site, and let's say I want to make a frenzy build. Okay, so here you type in frenzy in the search bar, and you will see everything that has anything to do with frenzy. And then you will be like, oh, there's like nothing scaling with frenzy, so except this thing, so that build won't work. Yes, it will work. Anything will work. Okay, so what is frenzy? Frenzy gives you stacks, and you attack faster and faster for each stack you have, and you get more tanky for each stack you have. You might take this one that gives you even more attack speed, but yeah. So you can make a build around attack speed scaling, because that's a big part of the build. This amulet, it just gives you your other skills more increased attack speed. So if you found this item, then you should probably not only use frenzy, you should use more attacks. So that's a start, you know. You get up your frenzy stacks and you do one skill and then you go back to frenzy. But if you really want frenzy to be your main thing, you have to check what else is it. It's a dual wielding, so you can search dual wielding. I don't know how much stuff in the game has to do with dual wielding. Not too much either, but there are some. Attack speed increase. This works well with our attack speed build. But it's also a basic skill, and there's a lot of things that scales with basic abilities, okay? This scales with core, so yeah. Now we have two things leaning into the use a lot of frenzy and use another skill. So then we use one core skill as well. Basic skill has even more attack speed, and do you know what scales good with attack speed? On hit effects. So then you have all the lucky hits things. We can just check. So this has 30% each attack, and you will attack quite fast, so you have quite high chance to proc. Okay, so lucky hit, and there's tons of things with lucky hits. Okay. So for example, you trigger poison novas, you do poison damage, so you will do a lot of lucky hit damage, and so on. Reduces the cooldown of your non-ultimate skills. So there's a tons of things with lucky hits. So you could go a frenzy lucky hits thing, just or something with a lot of attack speed. There's probably other things that scales well with attack speed. And then you can find up in the Paragon skills as well that you have. While Berserking, yeah, Berserking gives attack speed as well and extra damage. So you should probably do something with Berserking in Frenzy. So then we can search for Berserking. And we add the stuff that has to do with Berserking. This ultimate maybe. So just search everything that has to do with the skill you want to use, and you will have your build. It's that easy. Everyone can do it. Everyone can build a strong build themselves, especially if they know about the damage buckets and that they know that they should stack everything defensive that they can find. They will be fine. And I think a lot of casual players should learn to play the game the developers intended, and not watch some random pro talk about things in the game that are not actually the most fun things in the game. Like, how many pro players talk about barricades being a good thing? I think it's really good because it also gives you choice, and the developers were big on choice. Do you want to ride around the barricade? Do you want to jump off your horse? And did you know that behind the barricades are usually the highest mob density, so there's a lot of farm? And I can promise you it's the same people who complain about barricades that complain about there being a low mob density in the game. But we like the low mob density because if there were 100 enemies on the screen, we could not think about the charging up mechanics and the telegraphed things. We want there to be like 7 enemies. So we can think about everything. And if we do a mistake, we should die. Otherwise you're playing too low nightmare dungeon level. You should have to go back to base and fill up your potion as the healer. Like, why is there even a healer in the game? If you're just playing the cookie cutter build and only playing easy content, you never need to go to the healer. Sometimes when I do the dungeons, I have to go back 4 times just to fill up my potions. And also one more thing. A lot of people are complaining about nerfs. Nerfs are good, okay? Trust me, nerfs are the best way to go about this game. We don't want the power creep too fast. We want to enjoy the game now when it's still hard, when it's still good. If they never nerf anything, everything is just gonna get stronger. And you're gonna get bigger numbers, and the only way they can fix it is making the enemies have more HP, and there's like trillions of damage, and it's gonna become like Diablo 3. I think we will get to Diablo 3 points eventually in like 10 years, because there will be a power creep. When they add more legendaries, it's gonna be harder to balance and stuff like that. But right now, it's really good. Keep on nerfing. Like, having only one viable build is not fun. Nerfing the most powerful things is super good. They nerfed the highest XP farm dungeons. Like, people said they are nerfing fun. Like, how can it be fun to run the exact same dungeon over and over again just because it gives you 10% more XP? You want the game to be balanced, and the best way to balance it is by nerfing the things that are too good. And yeah, they can buff, like they did. They buffed, let's say, all the primary generator skills by 3%. That's a modest buff, and it's okay. That's fine. If they realize that they are too bad, yeah, they can increase them a little bit. So yeah, nerfs are good, and a lot of the things that players are complaining about are actually really good, because they are not actually playing the game. They are trying to play against the game. I love the game, and I think you will too if you play it the correct way. The game should be hard. You should die in the Nightmare Dungeons, okay? Thank you for watching. See ya.